Today we're looking at 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, and in this chapter there are two main things that Paul is trying to teach the Thessalonians. The first one is about living a life of purity, and that is not easy in today's world. You know, with all of the stuff that people have access to in terms of pornography on the internet and on television, and all of the whole culture really, which kind of throws all of these images at us. It is not easy to live a life of purity in today's world, and yet as Christians we're called to be radically different. You know, the Christian sexual ethics of faithfulness and marriage and monogamy, they were at least as countercultural in Paul's day as they are today. Sometimes we think, all this old-fashioned stuff, you know, it's not really relevant to us. But actually, in Paul's day, it was just as radical. It was just as controversial to be faithful and to live a different way, and to have only one person who you're married to for the whole of your life. And those things were always controversial, and they always will be. And yet, God calls us to a life of purity and a life of faithfulness. And that those things are just as relevant today as they were then, and God can help us to do that. So that's one of the things Paul exhorts his people to. The other thing is he teaches them about the second coming of Jesus. You know, that Jesus is coming soon, and if he was coming soon then, he's certainly coming soon. 2,000 years later, we expect and we pray for him that he'll return one day and put the world to rights. And this imagery that Paul uses here in the Bible of a people kind of going to meet him in the air. Sometimes we've imagined it as us all like floating up in the air, and then we're all kind of on a cloud in heaven somewhere, and we play harps for all eternity. But the imagery that he uses here would have been very familiar to the people of the time, because when a king went out to battle, and then if he won the victory, he would return with his soldiers, and the people would have lookouts on the city walls. And when they saw the king coming, they would sound the alarm, and a whole of the city would gather together, and they would go out of the city to meet the king, and to meet the conquering king. And then they would welcome him, and they would, you know, put him on their shoulders, and they would carry him and the conquering army back into the city, where they would celebrate the victory that king had made. And that's the imagery that's here. So when we see Jesus coming, the picture is of us as his people going to meet the conquering king. And we don't, but the thing is that they didn't just stay outside the city and live there, and we're not just going to stay in the air and live there, but they bring him back to the city, and we will meet the King of Kings as he comes, the conquering king. And we won't float around in the air for eternity, but he will come back, and we will reign with Jesus on the renewed earth forever and ever. So it gives us hope, and it gives us a reason to live holy lives in this life, because Jesus is coming soon.